Welcome to Oneiro TV, the channel that's dedicated to bringing you the best information on lucid dreaming and the out-of-body experience. I'm Hayden Ebert, and today we're at the Gateways of the Mind Seminar 2013 in London, and we have with us Mr. William Buhlman. William is the author of Adventures Beyond the Body, The Secret of the Soul and Adventures in the Afterlife. And he also teaches his out-of-body intensive course at the famous Monroe Institute in Virginia. William, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Can you give us a bit of insight into the early days when you first discovered your ability to induce the out-of-body experience and what started you on your path?
Well, back in 1972, a friend of mine had a spontaneous out-of-body experience and it changed his life completely. And I was just curious. I had no knowledge of it. I didn't believe in it. Matter of fact, I was the last person in the world to believe in this being a reality. And I found that there was actually techniques and books written on the subject, and I tried one of the techniques that I now teach as a target technique. And I did the technique for, well, 24 days it took, a daily technique as I fell asleep. And on the 24th day, I self-initiated my first out-of-body experience, which was just mind-blowing experience. Suddenly you go from being a disbeliever to a knower, and it's a shocking experience at first, because I literally found myself separated from my body at the foot of the bed, looking at this lump on the bed, and I knew I was fully conscious, fully aware, and it was not a dream. And it was just life-changing. Yeah. And that's what started me on my. Then I became obsessed with it. Once I realized this is real, it was like a whole new world opened up, and it's like, oh my God, there's other dimensions. Yeah. And nobody could have possibly told me and convinced me of this unless I had my own experience. Yeah. And then I began my personal journey of discovery.
So that was back in the 1970s, wasn't it?
Yeah, early 70s, so 72.
Very little around as far as information goes, so you had to make your own way, I should imagine.
Yeah, back in the early 70s there was not much information, and you really had to be self-supportive. You had to do your own journey. You had to learn through trial and error, like I did for 2 decades. I had a lot of experiences, and I learned just slowly learn. It's almost like you're a child learning a new skill, and you're learning to explore, and you just try things. That's what I did. I tried all kinds of things, and slowly you just developed your skills you need. But it takes a while, especially when you don't have the knowledge. Now today, people have a lot easier.
A lot more access to it. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot more information, and there's a lot more guidance that is really helping people. I think that's one of the things I like to provide.
Yeah. Have you got any examples of those early experiences you had?
Oh wow, I had a lot of early experience. At the beginning, you're almost like a child coming out of the crib, and I used to experiment with putting my head through the wall. That sounds so silly. But
non-physical things.
Yeah, I would walk through walls, which was just exciting. I mean, that's what you're doing at the beginning. You're literally exploring this new reality and your potential as a non-physical being. I would fly. My favorite thing to do was to fly. Yeah. And you're fully conscious. I like to emphasize this. And it was a blast. Yeah. And then spontaneously, I actually had experiences where I started to meet people who were non-physical residents, let's say. Yeah. And that opened up. It's just mind-blowing. Just totally mind-blowing.
One of your early ones, you sort of mentioned you saw a being which was observing you coming out of body and stuff.
Yes.
Like that.
And one of the early experiences I had, I'd leave my body, and as I looked around at my environment, I realized I was being observed by someone who had a beard, dark hair, and it was quite shocking at first. And then I realized that this person was just there as a kind of like guidance. Yeah. For lack of a better word.
Did you converse with him?
Not, a little bit, just basically that we were friends. Yeah. He didn't look at himself as a guide, but we were just friends, and he was kind of like checking in on me and assisting me when he could. Yeah. It wasn't this hierarchical system like I'm here to assist you. It wasn't anything like that. And I think we do that to each other after we make our non-physical transition for maybe our friends.
Yeah, yeah.
People don't look at it that way, but that's exactly the way it develops.
Yeah.
I also, one of the really earth-shaking events is when I met my dead uncle.
Right.
And what was shocking is that I knew it was him. It was vividly, you just know, it's his communication is just pure knowingness. But
yeah.
he looked like he was about 22 years old.
In his prime. Yeah.
In his absolute prime, very thin. When he died, he was very heavy set. And when I saw him, he was like 150 pounds, like he'd just come out of the military. And that was just eye-opener. And
yeah.
we actually had a communication, just like we are now, face to face.
Yeah.
And I'm staring at him like, you know, you're in like, oh my God, you're kidding me. I'm talking to my dead uncle, and you don't want to believe it almost. But it was that, and he called me Willie. And he was the only man on the planet, I hated being called Willie. So he was the only man that would call me Willie.
So after that, you had no doubt that it was actually
it was,
him,
yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. There was no doubt at all. Matter of fact, he was curious how I could leave my body. That's what he was. He was more curious about me than I think I was of him once we started. By the way, the communication is not like we're doing. It's just thought transfer. It's very instant.
Moving on, I mean, you currently teach residential courses at the famous Monroe Institute. Can you tell us a bit about how you got involved with Robert Monroe and the work of the Institute?
Skip Applewater, the past president of the Monroe Institute, called me one day and basically asked me if I wanted to be actively participating with the Institute. And of course I said, yes, of course I would, because everybody knows the Monroe Institute.
Yeah, yeah.
And at least in the U.S. it's very famous. And so I said, sure, and I went down and we had a meeting about it, and they invited me to do my workshop without no strings attached. Just bring your workshop into the Monroe Institute and start to do it here. He obviously knew what I did and was well versed in it. So what was beautiful for me was that I was able to do it without, I didn't have to change anything that I did. They just brought my workshop into the Monroe Institute, and now I just incorporate their technology into my workshop. And it's a 6-day workshop. It's called Out of Body Exploration Intensive, and it's generally sold out very quick. I do 5 a year. They're 6 days long. It is intense. I wake people up in the middle of the night. It's an unusual workshop, and it's exciting because the whole idea is to initiate people's experiences.
Right.
And it's worked out extremely well.
Right. I've personally had some really good success with some of your techniques like the awareness now and clarity now, to sort of snap in the focus once you're in the out of body state. What was it that sort of prompted you when you first started using those, concise verbal demands to snap in that?
Oh, that's a good question. My biggest problem, when I started having OBEs, I had a problem with mobility and perception, or what we would call vision. Of course, when you have an out-of-body experience, you don't have physical organs, you don't have eyes and ears. People assume you do. You do not. You're using your mind to create tools or perception vehicles to perceive your environment, which is non-physical. So what I found very quickly was that if I didn't, often I'd be heavy, which is very common in out-of-body exposure to be. You have a heaviness and you can't see properly.
The dark space. Yeah.
Yes, it's very annoying, and you're very limited. I experienced that, so I experimented with different commands, and I found that awareness now is incredible. If you are powerful about it and you demand it, it's very
absolutely right.
What you're actually demanding is more conscious awareness to be present in that energy body that you're experiencing. And because we forget that our consciousness is spread over a continuum of many different energy bodies. Because we're much more complex beings in body, mind, spirit. We have multiple energy bodies. So we have to focus. Once you separate from your body, you're operating another energy body. You need to bring in more of your conscious awareness into that energy body, because part of it is in your body, keeping your body running. Part of it is in your mind, part of it is in different parts of yourself. And by demanding awareness now, it has a tendency to
drawing it into that current.
Yes, if you focus, it's a focusing tool, and suddenly, bang, you're fully aware, fully present. To be quite frank, you can be far more aware than you are in the body.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to for 20 years I've been teaching that technique.
It's a great technique.
Yes, and it works, but you have to be strong. You can't be, some people you can't go, awareness now. You know, you have to be really demand of yourself.
Yeah.
And then it works extremely well. It also helps in prolonging your experiences. Because most people's out-of-body experiences are very brief.
Short, yeah.
But by using
you have,
minutes maybe. Where once you use this technique, you can prolong it for as long as you keep on repeating. I mean, it's for. I've had out-of-body experiences for half an hour, 45 minutes an hour.
Yeah, just keep pulling the senses back.
Yeah. And it works incredibly well.
What do you think, going back to the dark space, sometimes you go out and you have no visual, you've just got a sense of, you know, tactile perception. Why do you think that is? Why do you think sometimes you go out and you don't have that visual straight away?
Partially because you're not taking that part of your conscious awareness with you. Also, people experience voids and they become, let's just say, confused. Everybody assumes that matter, that this is the baseline for reality, and what I have found is that this is just the thin epidermis that we're existing in right now. And unfortunately, most people judge reality by what is solid and three-dimensional, where actually reality can be anything that you create for yourself. It doesn't have to be three-dimensional. And true reality can be almost a void state with the potential of creating any reality, which is where your true power is. That's what the Buddhists have been saying for 1,000 years, essentially. But it's very true that the void is a very powerful creative spot. But so there's two issues. First, you could be experiencing a non-form-based reality. And second, you probably haven't brought in enough of your conscious awareness to accentuate or elevate your state of consciousness so your perception capabilities are enhanced.
Right, okay. The other thing that is often fraught with difficulties for early stages with projectors is methods of ascending to different locales within the astral. How do you do that yourself?
I just demand the location I want. Yeah. For instance, I use one of the commands that I teach in my workshops is next level now.
So much like awareness now.
It is, but it takes you to if you're in a, let's just say a dense environment that you want to leave for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's negative, but you want to change your experience and move to a higher level or a level within yourself. Next level now will take you to a different vibrational reality.
Right.
And or, for instance, if you want to meet your, I've done this, so I know it's very, very doable. For instance, your mother has died, and you want to meet your mother face to face. Just say her name.
Yeah.
And as long as the two parties are mutually acceptable to meeting, either she will come to you or you will come to her, and you'll be instantly in a new reality. Right. It's about taking control of your own state of consciousness. Unfortunately, most people don't do that. They're shocked, or they're startled, or they're fearful, or they just don't realize that they have the control and the power. Because we have to remember the universe is thought responsive.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that many people forget. And we are the initiator of our experiences. So we can move to any location we choose as long as we are sure, as long as we're focused on it.
Right.
And it's a matter of just focusing your awareness.
Focusing your awareness and using the verbal command.
Okay. Yes.
Science is still a long way behind what's been discovered about the nature of the universe by everyday people who are having these extraordinary out-of-body experiences. Do you foresee a future where science catches up and non-physical dimensions with waking awareness are accepted as a norm rather than something that's abnormal, something a bit more accepted like normal dreaming, for example? Do you think that will occur at some stage?
I think that science got a long way to go. It's hard to, I think it's possible in the future that there'll be, let's just say, technology available, but I think we're quite a ways from that.
Yeah.
I tell people that you just develop your own experience. A lot of people talk about proof, and that's why there's emphasis on scientific technology. They want to prove things. The best way to prove it is to have your own experience. It's like there's no video of dreams.
No.
People forget that. Why do we accept dreams as a reality? We have no physical proof that we dream.
No.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And yet it's become accepted. Why? Because the masses, the vast majority of people dream. So we can readily share our experiences. What I think is going to be a more normal evolution is that as consciousness expands, more and more people will be having conscious, not only will they be becoming more lucid, like the conference I'm at now, where there's a lot of people exploring lucidity, but more and more people will become, let's just say, we'll have more and more conscious out-of-body experiences.
No, we no need for proof at that stage.
And it's like nobody seems to doubt dreams are real.
No, that's right.
But yet, and I think that's a good, valid point, because there's a connection, and it's just another step of consciousness, or the evolution of consciousness from a lucid dream is very close, I think, to an OBE. It's just a matter of taking that next step.
Yeah. What do you define as the difference there then?
Degree of conscious awareness present.
Right.
It's all about conscious awareness, because we're conscious. We are consciousness. We're not bodies. We're not humanoid even. We are consciousness using bodies. So if we're consciousness, it's just a matter of becoming more aware of who we are. Many of the older philosophies have said that for thousands of years, but it's essentially as we become more aware of our true self, we will become more conscious of our interdimensional self, and this, I think, is the natural evolution of our entire species.
Right. In your latest book, it's Adventures in the Afterlife. It was inspired by your own battle with cancer.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing a bit about your ordeal and how you coped with it?
Okay. Yes, I was in March of 2011. I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of the lymph nodes and tonsils, and it was quite shocking, obviously. And you had to make quick decisions. I had to make very quick decisions. And I immediately had surgery to have the tumor. I had quite a large tumor in my neck. So the doctor said I had like 2 weeks, because so I didn't have the luxury of planning and playing around with it.
Yeah.
But while I was healing from my surgery, I began to have spontaneous out-of-body experiences. Where I was floating out of my body, and I found myself, it's difficult to really convey this, but I was in some kind of healing room. I was floating in a room that was pure white with no doors and no windows, and I was saturated with energies. And I was told, essentially, no one was present, but I was internally told just to stay still, because I'm conditioned to go door now. It's one of my training. I go door now. It's part of my exit program. So in this case, I was essentially instructed to just relax and enjoy the floating sensation. And it was amazing. For about 6 weeks, I had these experiences on a daily basis. And put it into perspective, I just had serious surgery, and I was in intense pain. And this gave me that respite, because I would be waking up constantly or becoming aware of my body. So every time I almost drifted off, I'd find myself in this healing space, which was an out-of-body state. And I think it healed me. It assisted in my healing process very quickly, because I was back at doing 6-day workshops within 4 months. Wow. After the doctor even told, take off the year. This is in March. He said, you're done for the year. He said, just be aware of that. He said, because a lot of people can't even talk after the surgery.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so close to your vocal cords, and there's so many issues. So anyway, in 4.5 months, I was back perfectly healed and doing 6-day workshops.
Yeah.
So I think the OBEs is, you can't prove this, but in my mind, I am convinced that my healing that I was open to, and I think that's an important point, I was open to receive it. I'm not saying I did any of this, and I like to make that clear. I didn't self-initiate it. I didn't even request it. Maybe subconsciously I did.
Yeah.
I probably did, but suddenly that's where I was.
Yeah.
And my ability, I think, to be open to the OBEs made me aware of this process. It's possible that many people have this experience, but they're not aware of it.
Yeah.
Or they may think of it as a dream. In my case, I was fully aware and conscious in the experience.
Yeah.
So I think it was very important.
The first couple of chapters of the new book, Adventures in the Afterlife, they're very moving. They really give a reader a sense of what it's like to face the transition of death. And no matter how spiritual we are and what experiences we have, it's a huge thing to deal with.
Yes, it is.
Do you think we can ever be ready for death?
I hope so, because that's one of the things I talk about now in my workshops extensively. Conscious transition, I call it.
Yeah.
I feel that OBEs help us to prepare for the natural transition we call death.
Yeah.
Because it prepares us. By the way, my wife works at hospice. She's a volunteer at hospice. And she actually does Reiki on hospice work. But what I found fascinating, and this has been confirmed at this workshop, is that people, as they approach death, have spontaneous OBEs. It's nature's way, I strongly feel, to prepare us for this new state of consciousness. We're about to shed our physical body. And psychologically, our spiritual self, or whatever you wish to call it, is preparing us for this transition of consciousness by allowing us to be fully conscious in this new state. In other words, we're trying out our new energy body, essentially. We're getting familiar. And this is universal. All the books that I have read in the last 5 years related to the preparation of death talks about this. This is not something new.
Yeah.
All the hospice workers, my wife has heard it already. She's talking to people in hospice, and they said that I was floating out of my body and I had contact with my aunt. This is common stuff that hospice workers hear. But what's actually happening? I strongly feel that these people that are dying are having out-of-body experiences, and they're interconnecting or reconnecting with loved ones that have already made this transition. And it's logical.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you're on your path.
Yeah.
In days, you're
Like
going to be reunited.
the,
It's preparing us for this transition to come. And it's about time. Unfortunately, it's not well known to the mass media. But I think this is important stuff that needs to be out there. And I write about it in my new book. But I think it's critically important that we can prepare ourselves for our transition.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the better versed we are in the out-of-body states.
Oh, absolutely. Out-of-body exploration is, I think, one of the best preparations for transition, because you're familiar with the process and you're familiar with your energy body that you will experience. I can't. What better preparation can there be?
Operating and navigating in that.
Yeah, you're beginning to navigate in your new environment that you will experience, and we all will experience it.
Yeah.
There's no escaping it, by the way.
That's it.
And what's funny about this whole subject, there's no escaping the fact that we're all going to have an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
So why not learn about it? This is not theory. This is not conjecture. Everybody knows they're going to leave their body.
Yeah.
So why not become prepared? Why not be knowledgeable? People become interested in all these crazy subjects that have no relevancy to their life. This is relevant because it's a powerful transitional state that all of us will have.
Yeah. And the new book, I really enjoyed it, and although it's written as a story, I know it comes from a place of personal knowledge and experience from you. Can you tell us how you began sort of pushing the frontiers of consciousness and how your practice developed and how you were able to sort of map the non-physical environment when you were in there? Because you've done a bit of mapping of different locales and different levels and that sort of thing. How did you do that, and how did you sort of go through that process?
That is a 41-year process that I've experienced. It wasn't something I planned to do. It's just suddenly you find yourself in a locale and you're trying to figure it out, to be quite frank. It wasn't like I was trying to figure out the nature of the universe. That wasn't my intent. First, I was just having fun with it.
Yeah.
By just walking through walls and doing stuff like that and flying. And then I found myself in multiple locales, and obviously I want to know where I am.
Yeah.
And that drove me to find out, well, why am I here? What is this place? And this took me decades. This isn't just something you suddenly know. It's like trial and error. Suddenly you're in an environment and you don't know what that environment is. And you have to really focus and ask questions. I would just simply ask questions. Often,
of the environment.
Or of myself.
Yeah.
Because I feel that my inner self, my higher self, has answers.
Yeah.
Many people look outside themselves for everything. I don't. I feel strongly now that I'm connected to the source. So the answers are in me.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest mistake people make is to look outside of themselves for the answers, because it's a labyrinth of illusion around us. So the more that we look outside ourselves, the more confusing the world becomes.
Yeah.
And because you realize that we're interdimensional, we're already existing in every level of the universe. So the answers must lie within us. We have to figure out ourselves. And once we figure it out ourselves, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I tried to the best of my ability, when I created my models of the multidimensional universe, I was using it. That's the model of myself, because I'm a microcosm of the universe. You and I, all 7 billion of us, we're microcosms of the multidimensional universe.
Yeah.
And as we explore within ourselves, we begin to realize, because there's different rules. Just in short, everything becomes more thought responsive as we go inward.
Yeah.
Here things are very dense and very slow, and you got to focus to create. But as you go inward, it becomes more and more subtle. Instantly, finally you get to a point where thoughts are creating instant reality. And that's how you can judge the reality you're in, by how instantly thought responsive it is. Because the further in you go, the more to the point where you have instant reality.
Yeah.
And that is how I determined that. Those models that I created.
Yeah. So during your sort of battle with cancer, no doubt that sort of intensified your need to find out what's existing in the afterlife.
Yes, it sure did.
And did that help you did you visit those locales and go through those areas?
I was fascinated. Especially when I had cancer, I had plenty of time to explore. I was in my bed, I was incapacitated.
Yeah.
And I took advantage of that opportunity, and I explored all kinds of areas. I didn't want to come back to my body because it was painful.
Yeah.
So I would try to prolong my out-of-body experiences, and suddenly I would find myself in different locales, different kinds of energy environments, and of course that's what the new book is based on. I create a fictional character, but these are based on my experiences, and some of them were shocking, some of them were not necessarily pleasant. People think, it's all harps and roses. No, because it's all about states of consciousness.
Yeah.
And the universe is about states of consciousness, and we're drawn to different states based on our state. And I was able to, on multiple experiences, to, let's just say, visit some very, let's just say, interesting places that were training grounds of consciousness, because it's all a training. The physical world's a training ground. The training grounds just become more sophisticated sometimes and more immediate. but they're still training grounds, and and where you get to redo the, let's just say, the training until you get it right.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to outline in the new book about a gentleman who dies that goes through these, let's just say, transitions of consciousness and this training of consciousness, so he's able to move into the higher levels of reality.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great book. It's written really well and takes us through that journey. So
Yeah, yeah, that's what I tried to get across. That this, of course, I was describing the astral, the training grounds of the astral, and what I would like to get across is that most people, of the billions of people on Earth, most people after death, that's where they will go. They don't go. So a lot of people are under the illusion that they'll just become airy-fairy soul level, and because they're so pure. Not the case. We carry our stuff with us.
Yeah, carry the baggage.
All the baggage goes with us, and that's what some people. I just had a gentleman tell me your book was shocking to me because I thought I'd be purified, and I just looked at him and said, well, that would be nice, but unfortunately, we carry because we're the ones that have created it. We're the ones who have attached ourselves to it.
I mean, I know from my own experience, you don't have a body, you're still you.
Yes.
You step into that location, and it's just like you got up and walked over.
Yeah, exactly. It's just lighter.
Yeah.
But you have all your fears, all your issues you're carrying with you.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why people often are limited.
Yeah.
Because they are carrying their stuff with them. And but the bottom line is most people go to what we call today the astral. And they go to a consensus reality that resonates with them, with their state of consciousness.
Yeah, like the religious location.
Yeah, if you're a born-again Christian, you're going to end up probably with other born-again Christians because it resonates with your state of consciousness.
Yeah.
It's not like somebody's pulling strings. It's like oil and water. It all goes to its own level.
Yeah.
It's actually quite magnificent. Everybody talks about this micromanagers. There's angels and everybody's doing this. No, I never witnessed that. Everything is oil and water going to its own vibrational level.
Yeah.
And it's brilliantly conceived.
Yeah.
There's no police force needed.
No.
It's all natural.
Yeah. And going back to the sort of your model of the multidimensional universe, can you just run us through? You talk about the different layers going inwards.
Yes.
Can you just explain that for us?
Well, when you have an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience, you're shedding your physical body for a temporary period of time, and you're moving into your finer vibrational energy body, and you're actually moving into the universe. Think of the physical world as the epidermis, and you're moving into a much finer vibrational world. And each one becomes successively less dense and finer vibration as you move inward. And what people experience, of course, is what resonates with them. And these, if you want to call them levels, they're not so. Levels is a bad word because it's really about states of consciousness.
Yeah.
And different states of consciousness create different environments because thought creates reality. So people end up experiencing an energy vibrational level, let's say, that resonates with them.
Yeah.
And it's just an ongoing. For instance, what I call, or what many people call the astral, has billions of realities.
Yeah.
It's not the old theosophical 7 and 7. It's much more involved than that, I found.
Yeah.
It's not 7 levels of it. It's 7 maybe million, or I don't know.
Yeah.
As many states. Look how many states of consciousness we have on Earth.
Everyone has their own, don't they?
So there's 7 billion states of consciousness on Earth right now.
Yeah.
So use your imagination, and you can see that the environments are almost endless.
Including the animals and all of that.
Yes, and not counting all the non-humanoids.
In your books, you talk about consensus and shared non-physical environments as well. How do you define the difference between a shared environment and a subjective environment. How would you define which one is which?
There's different realities that we encounter. There's different environments that we encounter during out-of-body experiences. To make it clear, I thought to my readers, I created basically consensus realities are those that are created by groups of thought.
Yeah.
They're a collective of individuals, which are very common. It could be 1 million people get together. London is a consensus reality, for instance. These are all consensus or group thought created London. And same applies when you go out of body. There's a collective of individuals that will create an environment that's comfortable for them, so they hang out together essentially.
Yeah.
It's like I'd rather be with friends and people that resonate with me. It's that simple. A non-consensus are realities that have not been influenced by group thought. So when you enter them, you can influence that reality. Because
so the consensus ones
you cannot, you're not going to mold, just like I can't stare at this picture in the physical world and change it.
Right.
And the same is true in the astral. If we were on the astral right now and we're in a consensus reality, it would be maintained by the collective thoughts of the group. One individual would not have the power to override the thoughts of 100,000 people.
Sure.
So the reality, that's also what creates stable, and people think that's reality, because, oh, it's stable, it's solid. It also creates a solid reality.
Right.
Because solid, of course, is relative to the vibration of the individual group. It's like two planes going 700 miles an hour next to one another, and they look like they're standing still.
Yeah.
Same thing with vibration. So that's a consensus. If you can change the environment, if you can stand out of body and let's say I create a car, then you're in a non-consensus reality.
Right.
Because you're altering the energy molecular, it's not molecules, but it's like you're changing the energy structure.
Yeah.
And you're molding it with your own thoughts. And then the third kind of reality that I ran into, especially were voids, which are very, very prominent. And voids are, again, but they have no form at all attached to them.
Right.
So that's how I classified it in 3 kinds of realities.
So if you're in your non-consensus or void or a consensus, how would one transfer from one to the other?
You just think if there's a group that you'd like to connect with,
yeah.
You just connect with it. You just think of the group and you'll be there.
Right.
Remember, it's always speed of thought,
Yeah.
But you have to be prepared for that. It's easy for me to say that, but that takes a lot of people training to get used to that transition. It's shockingly fast.
Yeah.
And I write about this in the book where my main character goes through training to be able to transfer consciousness.
Yeah.
It sounds, a lot of these things people say sounds easy until you try to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's often, and I've had this happen in my experiences for, especially the first decade. It's difficult to do this.
Yeah.
Because often it's so shocking and so startling. You not called coherence of your field, and you're back in your body.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to most people, especially in the first few years.
Yeah.
Because you have to train yourself to not only make the transfer of consciousness quickly, but you have to stabilize your state of consciousness. And I use stability now, awareness now. There's different ones that can do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's how people move from environment to environment. Unfortunately, a lot of people that are on the astral plane aren't even aware of this.
Yeah.
And they're trapped essentially in one consensus reality.
Right. Yeah.
For instance, if you were like we say, you take your stuff with you, you take your limits with you.
Yeah.
If you don't believe you can fly, you can't fly.
Yeah. All about belief, isn't it?
It really is.
In your latest book, you talk about the soul orchestrating its own learning situations, and you draw people and surroundings to you that provide specific opportunities for personal development. Do you think therefore that our personal challenges, battles and that we face are predetermined prior to our entry to the physical?
Oh, that's a good question. I do think that we come here with an agenda, kind of. There's a beginning agenda, I feel. We have just the very act of selecting the parents you have, for instance. You've probably set up a sequence of events based on, for instance, if you picked an alcoholic father, it would be a totally different experience than maybe a non-alcoholic father and mother. So in a sense, you're selecting a certain drama and trauma or conflict, however you want to call it, that you're going to have to deal with one way or another as a child in that family unit. So yes, I think people's consciousness moving into the situation. I'm not saying they know everything, but I don't believe in predetermination.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that you know. People are creatures of habit, and they continue to be creatures of habit pre and after death. My point is that you have at least a clue of certain things that you're going to have to deal with. In other words, you're going to know about the socio-economic level that you're going to be dealing with, because you know the parents you're going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
So there's issues that you know are going to be, that you're going to have to deal with. For instance, you're going to know what country. Is that country on the verge of war?
Yeah.
Are you going to be born in Germany in 1933, for instance? You may be.
So from being now, obviously time's not linear there. You can then be reborn again, perhaps in the past.
I feel that time is not linear.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, no, I feel
So
that
past
we
life's
use.
not necessarily a past life. It could
No,
be a
no,
future life.
I use the term past life very loosely because
Yeah.
people don't understand it in any other terms. But no, I feel that we use a timeline just like as a tool. I'm talking about as consciousness, not as astral beings, but as higher level consciousness. What quality of consciousness or soul do you need to develop?
Yeah.
And what experience in the physical would give you that quality? Would it be better for you to be a Viking?
Yeah.
Or would it be better for you to be a monk? And there's different learning to be had there.
Yeah.
And I think that as consciousness, we pick those learning opportunities. And I also feel that we balance them. And there's a lot going on that we're unaware of, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot more planning. I'm talking about from a higher level of consciousness. It's not willy-nilly, it's not just thrown together, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and I think when people discover the totality of who they are and what they've been doing, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Because all of us have been here hundreds of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot more to us than what meets the eye.
Yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts on attachment? I mean, the Buddhist thing, you know, is quite often to avoid attachment or to become detached, that sort of thing. We naturally become attached to many things in our lives, people, situations, and stuff like that. Ultimately, eventually, we will have to leave them all behind when we do face the transition of death. Why do you think we form the attachments in the first place?
Fear. Often it's fear and lack of knowledge about ourselves. Let's face it, it comes down to identity. Who do you think you are? What do you think you are is a big question that people seldom ask. Most humans think they're a human being. There's 7 billion people here. The vast majority of them, if they ask you, who are you? I'm an American. I'm a human. I'm a male. In other words, they're attaching themselves to identity issues. They're all false. That's what, and I'm going to address this in the conference. All of the identity issues that we cling to, that we really believe in, and most people believe firmly. I mean, let's face it, we as human beings, isn't that the basis of human civilization?
Yeah.
That's the core issue. Oh, well, we're all human. But as consciousness, we're not.
Yeah.
Consciousness is non-physical, non-form-based. It's using tools as evolutionary avenues to learn through experience. So as consciousness, we're not human. One of the most shocking things that I learned, probably in the first decade of my experience, is everything that I had learned and believed was false.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying some. Everything. And it's a shocking. You have to start to rebuild your perception of reality. And that's why I think the Buddhists are strong on this attachment thing. because they realize that the more that you're identified, how can you experience your multidimensional spiritual self when you're still clinging to your body?
Yeah.
How can you do that?
Yeah.
It's impossible. That's why Buddhism teaches strongly detachment. That's why the Buddha taught so strongly the concept of detachment. Because you cannot connect with your true self. It's like an anchor in the mud. And that's what people do. They have multiple anchors tossed out into the muck, holding them to the density of the outer world. And as long as you have those anchors down, you're never going to go anywhere. So the concept was cut the anchors through detachment. And that's why I teach it strongly.
What do you think, in your opinion, is the ultimate goal of our practice in this out-of-body projections and stuff like that? And how would you keep your mind focused on that goal?
The ultimate goal, I think, is very clear to me. And it took me a couple decades to really realize what it was, because I was having fun on the astral, like a lot of people do that have out-of-body experiences. It's our ability to consciously connect with our spiritual essence, or whatever, higher self. It doesn't matter what term you give it, but through out-of-body exploration, we have the ability to consciously connect to our spiritual essence. And it's mind-blowing. It's beyond words, it's beyond philosophies, it's beyond... All the stuff that we think is important is nothing.
Yeah.
It's all nothingness, because it will all dissolve away. It's all about our state of consciousness, and we have the ability to consciously connect with our spiritual essence or higher self now in this lifetime. And I think that's the pinnacle of out-of-body experiences.
Last question then, William.
Sure.
There's obviously going to be people watching who are very curious about favourite techniques. What is, you spoke about the target technique, would you say that's your favourite?
I have a lot of favorites. I don't have one. My favorites change like every 5 years.
Is there one you'd like to give as a technique that you think people will have some success with?
To tell you one, I can share a brief one. A target technique is good. I teach 40 different techniques. They're different techniques are for different people.
Yeah.
For instance, people that are imaginative, that have good imagination skills, the target technique would work well. If you have poor imagination skills, the target technique won't work at all. And I like to get across because it's so important.
It's variable for different people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the technique that I like, and I'll probably share at this conference, among others, is just to lay in your bed and imagine that there is a concrete block before you. And you just carve into that concrete or marble block your intention to have a conscious out-of-body experience. Now I have a conscious out-of-body experience. And you carve it. You don't have to see it, you feel it. It could be as tactile as you want it to be. It doesn't have to be visual at all. But to the best of your ability, you carve your intention into this marble block. The marble block, of course, represents your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And you're carving into your subconscious mind your focused intention to have an out-of-body experience, a conscious out-of-body experience now. Now I have a conscious out-of-body experience. I'm not messing around. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And you do this as you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
And you do it every night for 30 days. And it's easy. What does this take?
Yeah.
3-4 minutes?
Yeah.
And you hold that intention as your last conscious thought, which is more difficult to do than it sounds.
Yeah, yeah.
But you hold your intention and you carve that into your mind. Then you can get wild with it. Make it a multi-dimensional carving. Surround yourself like a dome and have your entire dome covered in this carved intention.
Yeah.
And make it more and more visual, more powerful, to the point where your entire consciousness is saturated with that one intention. That is a very powerful technique, and it's simple.
Setting your intention in stone.
Set your intention in stone.
Yeah. Okay, William, thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and it's really been good to speak to you.
My pleasure.
If you'd like to learn more from William Buhlman, Check out his books, Adventures Beyond the Body, Secret of the Soul, and Adventures in the Afterlife. You can also find more information on his website, astralinfo.org.